Hello, I'm the Redheaded Okie, and I'm going to talk about books on this channel because that's what I like to do best, is read books and then talk about them. So that's what I'm going to be doing, and I've got 3 books today that I'm going to talk about, and I'm going to start with Lolita. So Lolita is a story about, Lolita by Vladimir Nabokov, which most people probably have heard about this one. It's considered a classic of Russian literature. Well, he's a Russian author. Anyway, so it's about this man, Humbert, I think is how you pronounce his name, and he is obsessed with nymphets, like 10, 12-year-old girls. He claims it's because of a young girl that he knew when he was that age and he was obsessed with, and it was his first sexual experience. So he goes, after his first marriage falls apart, he goes to America and he meets this woman who has a 12-year-old daughter, Lolita. And the minute he sees her, he's just stunned. That's what, he's like, there she is, that's my girl. And so he marries the mom, and when the mom dies in this freak accident, which is completely bizarre, you'd have to read it to understand what I'm talking about. And he takes the girl and he runs, and they go on this wild cross-country trip while in his mind, he's having a mad, passionate affair with this 12-year-old girl. In her mind, it's something else. She's, reeling from the death of her mother, and he's abusing her repeatedly. And she's just doing what she can to survive it and getting, through from one day to the next. She does manage to run away from him, and he searches for her until he meets up with this other lady named Rita, who is insane apparently, and he's always getting her out of trouble, and he goes driving around with her, and he figures out where Lolita is, and he goes to see her, and she's married and she's pregnant, and she does tell him how she got away from him, which was she escaped this pedophile with another pedophile, is the one that got her away from him. And and then she got away from that guy. And so Humbert's like, okay, I'm gonna go get that guy, and I'm gonna get my revenge because he took my Lolita away from me. And then he finds that guy, and there's this massively bizarre fight, and then he's arrested, and and he's telling his story from jail, and he references that. I chose this book because I had been intrigued by Russian literature for a while and Russian writers, and so I was going through, I read Anna Karenina last year, and I decided I was going to read either one work of Russian fiction or one Russian author every year until I got tired of it. So that's what I decided to do. But I mean, all I knew about this book was I knew there was a movie, or a couple movies that had been made about it. I knew it was about a guy that was obsessed with a 12-year-old. I didn't realize how far he went with her. It was full on. It's kind of gross. The book kind of makes you feel a little unclean. Kind of makes you want to take a shower, and it's kind of gross. And it's very uncomfortable, but of course it is very well written, which is why it's considered a classic. And the quote I chose from this book to mark down, I always choose one quote from each book, is this is Humbert speaking, and it's at the very beginning of the book, and he's been seeing these prostitutes, these young prostitutes, until he finds himself kind of in danger as a result of hanging out with these young prostitutes. And he says, quote, "I, on my part, was as naive as only a pervert can be." And I felt like this was illustrative of how he thought of himself. He, of course, does not see himself. He kind of sees himself as a bad guy, but he feels like his reasons justify how he feels. Is what my impression of it was. And I just felt like this was it, it just kind of, that's how he thought of himself, as he's got this thing, but he's but he can be a victim too. So the ending was very satisfying. The ridiculous fight, and then the arrest, you just have to read it to believe it. I mean, the fight is just completely ridiculous. And overall, I would say it's very compelling, because I couldn't put it down. I thought, I don't want to read this because it was just making me uncomfortable, and then I'd pick it back up and I'd read some more and be like, what the heck is he going to do next? And then I would just pick it up again. And so I ended up finishing it, because I was just like, I got to see how this goes, and plus the writing just kind of pulls you in, just really. It's just really, really well done. So if you appreciate really good writing, it's definitely an excellent example of that. So my next book that I'm going to talk about is, no, not that one. Dear Edward by Anne Napolitano, I think is how you say her name. And this one I chose because of the author. I read a book by her last year in a class that I took, a fiction class, Hello Beautiful, which I really, really liked. And so I saw this one, and then the plot of it, I was like, oh, okay, this is really interesting. I want to see what she does with it. Her writing is really, really good. I love the way she writes. But Dear Edward is about Eddie, who starts out as Eddie. He's a 12-year-old boy. He gets on a plane. His family is moving from New York to Los Angeles. They've always lived in New York City, and they're moving to Los Angeles because of his mother's job. The family, he has one brother who's 15, and then his mother and his father. And they get on a plane, and they head to Los Angeles, where she's going to be writing for television. And the plane crashes in Colorado. Edward is the sole survivor, and he doesn't realize this, because he's in a hospital until like about a month later, and he becomes very, very across popular, well-known across the states, across the world, because he's the sole survivor of this plane crash. And he goes to live with his aunt and uncle. His aunt is his mom's sister, and they had been trying to have kids, and they could not. She had several miscarriages, and so they had some issues of their own, and they do try to shield him from the public. They do a lot, filtering, who speaks to him and who has access and what he can see, and he's just completely in his cocoon. He has no idea which way is up. He's lost his entire family. He's gone through this majorly a traumatic experience. And he's just completely shut down to begin with. He meets the neighbor, who's a woman with a 12-year-old daughter, and he doesn't want to sleep in. He has trouble sleeping, and he especially doesn't want to sleep in the room that he's given at his aunt and uncle's house. And so he goes to, one night he just goes out after everybody's gone to bed. He walks out and he goes over to the neighbor's house, and the mother, her name is Besa, and the daughter's name is Shay. And he says, can I sleep in your daughter's room? He just kind of goes in there, and he goes in, and he's like, can I sleep in here? And they were like, okay. So this just becomes a thing. He just, every night he comes over there. They've made him a bed on the floor, and he sleeps there, because he can't sleep in other places. And so they kind of become friends, of course. And then when he's 15, and he's been in school for a couple of years now, and he goes into his uncle's garage, and he finds these bags full of letters that's been written to him over the last couple of years, by the other people who died in the plane crash, their families, and then just random people. And and he starts, oh, I've got to do something about these letters. I've got to answer these letters. So him and Shay organize and start answering these letters, and he finds out that his brother had a girlfriend that he had told that his brother had not told him about, and this kind of shocks him because he's like, he thought him and his brother were so close, and that he knew everything about it, and basically it's just this boy surviving this incident, and how he, just his experience of this. It's something that you couldn't possibly comprehend, and she handles it very beautifully. There's some really sad moments, there's some goofy moments, there's some slightly unbelievable moments, but things happen in books and movies to kids that wouldn't normally happen, I don't think, in real life, because a couple of 12-year-olds running around New York City is a little hard to believe on their own, but maybe it's possible, I don't know, I'm not from New York City. The quote that I chose from Dear Edward this is from Edward's thoughts, and he was in therapy, and he was talking with his therapist, and he had thought that he was gaining ground, and then something happened, and he thought he had stepped into a clearing and mistaken it for the edge of the forest, which I thought was really good, because his book is full of that, where he thinks he's progressing, and then something happens and he finds himself right back in the emotional state. It's this, and this is the way that you would imagine that it would be. You kind of, because humans are really resilient, and children are very resilient, more so than I think a lot of people give him credit for. And and he's alive, and he doesn't have any choice. At one point his uncle tells him that they thought that he would try to kill himself, and he's like, I would never do that, because I wouldn't want to leave anybody behind the way I was left behind. And that's just a heartbreaking moment, when you realize that he thought of that. And so my favorite character in this book was Gary. Gary was the boyfriend. So it does kind of go into a handful, like half a dozen or so characters who were on the plane, and it goes into their backstories and their lives and what they're doing on the plane, and their state of existence. And there's this one girl on the plane, her name is Linda, and she's a young girl, and she finds out she's pregnant, and she's going to meet this guy she's been carrying on this long distance romance with, and she's hoping that when she gets there, he's going to be the kind of guy that she wants him to be, and that he'll, be excited about, her pregnancy, and that he really wants her. And Gary comes to, and it turns out he was, and his name was Gary, and he was just a sweet guy that was waiting for her, and he was heartbroken because he was at the airport with flowers to greet her when she got off the plane, and so he was going to be what she was wanting him to be, and she didn't get to experience that, and that's really sad. So I think Gary was one of the ones that kind of stuck with me on this one. I did like the ending. It didn't just stop. But it didn't like wrap everything up. Edward's fine now, and he's proceeding with his life, that kind of thing. It kind of realistically showed, but it ended when he was like 18, so he's quite young. I think he's about to head off to college, so it's like, yeah, he's made it through all of that. Now he's got to go forward with this next step in his life, and that he is proceeding with that, so that's good. And he was able to develop some friendships with Shay and some others, and with create a better relationship with his aunt and uncle as well, which was very nice. I like that. And I would definitely recommend this book. Again, Ann Napolitano's writing is just beautiful. I love the way she writes. It's really, really, really good. Okay, so the next book I'm going to talk about is All Our Wrong Todays. It's backwards. Anyway, so this is by Elon Mastai, Elanmastai. I don't know how to pronounce that. I chose this because it was time travel, and I have a weakness for time travel books and stories. Never heard of this author, and it's about this guy named Tom whose father invents a time travel machine, but he's in a different future than one they had. It's 2016, but in his future, a machine was invented back in the 60s that created an endless supply of cheap energy to run the entire world. So his future was this modern future with like flying cars and machines that just pop out food when you ask for it and stuff like that, like Jetson future, right? Anyway, and his father invents this time travel machine, and his mother dies in this freak accident, and so his father puts him on this time travel team to be one of the chrononauts that's going to be in the initial trip to the past. And where they're going to go is they're going to go and see the moment that that guy invented the machine with the endless cheap energy generator, right? So he gets on the chrononaut team, and he develops a major crush for his he's an understudy, and so the woman that he's the understudy for, her name is Penelope, and he develops a major crush on her, and the night before the trip they sleep together, and when she goes in for her pre-trip examination they discover she's pregnant, and she doesn't get to go on the trip, and so she kills herself in front of him, and he's completely freaked out. His father is furious. They shut everything down. No time travel trips are going to happen. But he sneaks into the lab, of course, and he zaps himself to the past. And guess what? He changes the future. Everything's changed. He gets pulled back to the 2016, but it's our 2016, like the world we live in now. It's a different timeline. And he's like, this place sucks. It's terrible. And so it's basically him, but personally it's good for him because his mother's still alive. He has a sister, and he has Penelope, the alternate Penelope, who loves him. So his personal life is fine, but the world sucks. He hates it. So he's kind of torn. What does he do? Does he try to travel back and change things again? Will it do any good? Blah, blah, blah. This book, I hate the writing in this book. This book was terrible. It's like, what is it, like a 300-page book? 369 pages, 137 chapters. One chapter is just the F word and with 3 shits in there. Half a page. I mean, every page was a chapter. It's like, why? Why is every page a chapter? And then every third of the book, there would be a chapter where it was just recapping the previous chapters of the book, and I'm just like, why is this necessary? Why are we doing this? And however, the quote I chose from this book is, every person you meet introduces the accident of that person to you. And so this is Tom. I mean, he spends the whole book whinging on about wah, my life sucks, I'm a loser, I can't do anything right, and this is how, this is how he thinks of himself happening to people that he comes across in his life. He's the accident of the people that he meets to mess up their life, because it's just everything. He's a big screw up. He screws up everything. Blah blah blah. I did make it to the end because I wanted to see how, and it wasn't very good. I do not recommend this book. I probably will never read anything else by this author, but if you like time travel and you don't mind the main character just carrying on whining endlessly about what a loser he is and my life sucks, I'm terrible, go ahead and do that. Read it. If you like short chapters and a lot of them, read it. I mean, some of the writing was okay, but it really needed somebody to go in there and go, dude, you really shouldn't be putting this together this way. It could have been put together a bit differently. The timeline stuff, I don't know. Anyway, but it's a time travel book. I had to finish it. So anyway, that's the books I just finished, and I will see you next time with my next report on the books I'm reading. Yeah.